The information in this video is going to be about the different reading skills that you'll need in order to take the reading placement test. Some of these are going to be the following: identifying the topic, identifying stated main idea, identifying the unstated main idea, identifying supporting details, recognizing patterns of organization, making inferences, and recognizing purpose and tone. I'm going to be going through each one of these skills by first talking about them, defining them, and also giving each one an example. The first skill you're probably going to want to know about is identifying topic. The topic is the subject of whatever you're reading about. It's going to be a word or it might be a phrase that gives you an idea of what it's about. The main idea can usually be located if you determine what the topic is, so finding topic is important. To find the topic of a selection, ask the simple question: who or what is the selection about? Are there any words that keep getting repeated? So here is an example that I want you to take a look at. So read the paragraph and identify the topic that you see in front of you. Consumers concerned about the hazards or noise can reduce noise pollution in many ways. They can purchase noisy products such as garbage disposals and lawnmowers with reduced noise levels. They can also use sound-absorbing materials in their home. Carpeting can be installed instead of hard flooring. And cork and fabric can be used in rooms that tend to be noisy. Also, people can become less noisy themselves. They can learn to avoid shouting, to close doors without slamming them, and to play radios, TV sets, and stereos at moderate levels. So just kind of think to yourself for a moment, what do you think the topic of this is about? So below we have 3 possible topics: ways to reduce noise, noise-reducing products, or noise. Now, if you think about it for a moment, it's probably going to be ways to reduce noise, because this whole paragraph is about the ways to reduce noise. It's probably not going to be about noise-reducing products, because we're talking about people in this paragraph as well. People aren't products. And C, noise, it's probably not just going to be about that. That's too narrow. It's not very specific. So ways to reduce noise is probably going to be the topic of this paragraph. The second skill that you're going to have to practice is identifying main ideas in a sentence. Usually main ideas show up in a sentence in what you're reading, but sometimes they don't. For those instances where the main idea actually does show up, they're called stated main ideas. The author states the main idea in the form of a topic sentence or maybe a thesis statement. But implied main ideas, these are ideas that are not directly stated to the reader. You have to figure it out yourself. I'm going to be first covering stated main idea. Take a look now at the paragraph about school bullying. And take a look and see whether or not you can find where the main idea is. Hint, it might not be the first sentence. School bullies have been around as long as there have been schools. Studies reveal several reasons why some children become bullies. Research shows that a certain combination of size and personality may be one factor. Bigger, more aggressive children are more likely to try to dominate their smaller, quieter peers. Another factor linked to bullying is overexposure to violent TV programs. By the time the average American child is 10 years old, he or she has watched thousands of acts of violence, including assault and murder. Such exposure can lead to aggression and violence. Finally, exposure to real violence is a factor in bullying. Studies indicate that victims of bullies often turn into bullies themselves. Whether abused by family members or tormented by other kids, bullies typically learn their behavior from others. Look closely into the eyes of a bully, and you may be looking into the eyes of a former victim. So again, take a look at this paragraph. Where do you think the main idea shows up? So we have A, school bullies have been around as long as there have been schools. B, Studies reveal several reasons why some children become bullies. And C, finally, exposure to real violence is a factor in bullying. Studies indicate that victims of bullies often turn into bullies themselves. If you take a look at A, this probably isn't the main idea. School bullies have been around as long as there have been schools. If that's the main idea, then the whole entire paragraph needs to be about the history of bullying. But take a look at B. Studies reveal several reasons why some children become bullies. Is the rest of the paragraph about those reasons? Yes. If we look at it, there's about 3 reasons that are illustrated in the paragraph about why some people become bullies. If you look at C, though, C is just details that support our main idea. So it's not going to be C. So B, studies reveal several reasons why children become bullies, is going to be the main idea for this paragraph. So identifying the unstated main idea. This is a little bit different than stating or finding the main idea. For one thing, again, it's not stated. You have to figure it out yourself. But you can use several tips to try to find it. Again, looking for topic, which means looking for a phrase or word that sums up the whole entire meaning of the paragraph. It might also mean looking for repeated words. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be reading this out loud and take a look at this paragraph and see whether or not you can kind of figure out what the main idea is. Remember, it's not going to be stated in the paragraph. At one time or another, most adults have been in a romantic relationship. A guy walks up to a girl at a bar, gets her number, and the beginning of a relationship is formed. A guy and a girl meet in physics class, get paired as study partners, and the rest is history. 2 high school sweethearts rekindle an old flame on Facebook after years apart. These types of simple encounters may lead to relationships. And even though that first meeting is easy, the entire relationship is not. A lot of hard work goes into making a true bonded relationship. And when that work is bypassed, the relationship may not last. Take a look at the 3 possible answers below. The implied main idea is, what do you think? A, school is a great place to meet people. B, it is easy to start relationships, but making them last takes work. Or C, relationships are difficult to maintain. If you take a look at the paragraph, there's not a lot of information about the first one. School is a great place to meet people. It might be, but it's not really illustrated a lot in the paragraph. If we look at C, relationships are difficult to maintain. Yes, that's in the paragraph, but if you look at the whole thing, that's not the only thing it talked about. But look at B. It is easy to start relationships, but making them last takes work. That seems to be illustrated a lot in the paragraph. That probably is going to be the unstated main idea. Now, mind you, you see the answers there, but if you didn't see A, B, or C, you can still kind of figure out by yourself what you think the answer is going to be. When you take the AccuPlacer, when you read a question like this, take a moment to think to yourself, what do I think the answer is going to be? And then take a look at some of those answers. Supporting details. So supporting details are facts, statements, examples, which guide us to full understanding of the main idea. There's what hold up the main idea. Think of a table. And the top of that table is the main idea, and the legs are the things that actually support that main idea. So here's some tips to identify supporting details. Decide which details help to further the storyline or to further whatever article you're reading. Decide which details help you to understand the main idea, and answer the question raised by the main idea. Who, what, why, when, or how. That's what supporting details do. They answer the questions of why. They answer the questions of who is this about and what is this about. So identifying supporting details. Take a look at the paragraph about poor grades in school. I've already underlined the main idea. It's the first sentence, but remember, main ideas are not always going to be the first sentence. Poor grades in schools can have various causes. For one thing, students may have financial problems. If they need to work long hours to make money, they will have little study time. Another cause of poor grades may be trouble with relationships. A student may be unhappy over family problems or a lack of friends. That unhappiness can harm schoolwork. A final cause of poor grades may be bad study habits. Some students have never learned how to take good notes in class, how to maintain their time effectively, or how to study a textbook. Without such study skills, their grades are likely to suffer. So how do I figure out where my major supporting details are? Well, again, I already know what my main idea is. So poor grades in school have various causes. All right, so according to our main idea, this paragraph is going to be telling me about various causes. Do you see any various causes for poor grades in the paragraph? Well, yeah. Take a look at that first one right there. For one thing, students may have financial problems. That's our first cause. So take a look now at kind of the outline that I've made for the video. We have main idea, poor grades in school have various causes. Major supporting detail number 1. For one thing, students may have financial problems. So again, that's one of the causes. But then if you look at the sentence, if they need to work long hours to make money, they will have little study time. That's supporting the first major supporting detail. What about the next cause? We have financial problems so far. What's our next cause? Oh, another cause. There's words in there that are showing me where the next major supporting detail is. I have words like for one thing. I have words like another. And I have words like final in that last major supporting detail. These types of words are showing me where our major details are. So going back to major supporting detail number 2. Another cause of poor grades may be trouble with relationships. Okay, so far I have financial problems and trouble with relationships. Those are 2 causes so far in this paragraph for poor grades. What about the sentence, a student may be unhappy over family problems or a lack of friends? That unhappiness can harm schoolwork. So this minor detail right there, it supports another cause for poor grades, maybe trouble with relationships. Because again, that minor detail is about lack of friends, and it also is about family problems. But again, that sentence is just going to be a minor detail. For the major supporting detail, another cause of poor grades may be trouble with relationships. What about the last major supporting detail? Oh, look at that sentence right there. A final cause of poor grades may be bad study habits. So far we have financial problems, trouble with relationships, and bad study habits as causes for why someone might have poor grades. So a final cause of poor grades may be bad study habits. Now the last few sentences are just going to be minor details supporting that major detail. So some students have never learned how to take good notes in class, how to manage their time effectively, or how to study a textbook. Without such study skills, their grades are likely to suffer. So all of those are just going to be minor details that support the sentence about the bad study habits. So in total, how many details do we have here? 3. You're not always going to find paragraphs with just 3 major details. You might find more than 3. You might find less than 3. But the idea is that you use the signal words like for one thing, another, and final as a way to kind of figure out where those major supporting details are. Use the ideas. How different are these ideas? We have financial problems, trouble with relationships, and bad study habits as 3 major ideas that are spoken about in this paragraph. That's a way for you to be able to find the major supporting details. Patterns of organization. This is really just a simple way of saying that there are words in pieces of writing that help us figure out the organization of what we're reading. Actually, I gave you an example of that a little while ago. Remember the paragraph we just read about poor grades in school. I have words like for one thing, another cause, and final. Those are words that shows us the pattern of organization in that paragraph. Authors will use transition words and phrases to create patterns within their writing. Again, so that it's easier to follow what they're trying to say. The first pattern of organization is listing pattern. You've already been introduced to that type of pattern. Remember the paragraph about poor grades in school? Remember the words for one thing, another, and final? Those are listing words. They're words used to show the reader that a list of items is going to be talked about in a paragraph or in a story or even in a textbook. And it doesn't really matter which order I put it in. So for example, if we have a writer talking about 3 different schools, it doesn't really matter where I talk about the different schools. So for example, if it's about 3 schools in Massachusetts, it doesn't really matter what order I talk about the schools in. Some transition words that deal with listing pattern are first, second, third, another, also, to, finally, several. It might just deal with numbers as well. So here's an example. One way to overcome boredom is by turning on the television. Another way is to read a good book. Now, I can take those 2 details and I can actually just flip them around, and it's not going to change the meaning. One way to overcome boredom is to read a good book. Another way to overcome boredom is by turning on the television. See how it really didn't change the meaning of what I was trying to say? Because in listing pattern, again, you're just presenting a list of items. However, time order pattern is different. So when we think about time, there needs to be a specific sequence of events. One thing happens before the other. In order to start a car, first I have to turn the car on. Then I need to check my mirrors. And then, after that, I can put the car in drive. I can't put the car in drive before I start the car. So time order pattern. So again, these are ideas or events presented in the order that they occur. Sequences are told through dates, times, or numbers. Processes are explained through steps or stages. So for example, when you're reading a history book, you're probably going to be finding a lot of time order pattern. Here's some examples of time order pattern transition words. First, second, later, next, as soon as, after, then, finally, meanwhile, last, during, when, by the time, over time, until. You might see words like step or stage or message. You might even see words like procedure, or maybe even the term how to, as in how to do a specific task. You've probably noticed that a few of these are similar to the ones in the listing pattern. So first, second, and you might also see third. But in this case, it matters which one goes where. So here's an example. When Althea first began to drink, she just did not realize the risks she faced. Over time, her drinking slowly but surely took total control over her life. So we have words like when, first, and over time to show the sequence in Althea's life when she was doing this. Again, I can't really change the order around. And the time order words, again, show us what's happening and when things occurred in her life. Definition and example pattern. So these are going to be a bit different from the ones that came before. So when we look at the idea of a definition is given to explain a new, difficult, or special term. Examples are provided to clarify the definition. Usually this happens a lot of times in textbooks, where first you have the definition of a word, and you might have the example of that word. Definition transition words include words like, or phrases, consists of, in a term that, involves, is called, is characterized by, that is, occurs when, exists when, are those that, entails, means, for example, such as. So you might see a lot of these when you're dealing with definition example pattern. Here's an example of a definition example pattern. Repression is the mind's power to block fearful thoughts, impulses, and memories. For example, a person may repress or forget painful childhood memories. See what happened there? We have a definition, and right after that definition, we have an example to show us a little bit more about what that word means. The next pattern of organization is called comparison and contrast pattern. You may have seen this before if you were ever asked to describe something and compare it to something else, or describe something and talk about the differences between that and something else. This organizational pattern emphasizes the similarities or differences between two or more items. In comparison, writers show the way two or more ideas are the same. In contrast, writers show the way two or more ideas are different. The focus can be on just similarities, or just differences, or a combination of both. Let's just take a look at comparison transition words for now. So some of these words could be likewise, in comparison, to compare, resembles, is similar, in the same way, as well as, like, or even words like correspondingly, or just as. So here's an example of comparison transition words. There are similar safety features on all the cars in the showroom. And so as a result, you can kind of guess that the next sentence is going to be about the similar safety features. What about contrast? So let's take a look at some of those contrast transition words. In contrast, on the contrary, although, even though, similarly, however, on the other hand, as opposed to, whereas, instead, in spite of, different, differs from. So here's an example of contrast transition words. Mike studied and made a passing grade. Joe, however, didn't study and failed. So however is the transition words that shows a contrast between Joe and Mike. Remember, we mentioned Mike studied and made a passing grade, but then we said Joe, however, didn't study and failed. The differences, of course, is that one person passed and one person failed. But the word however can show the relationship between those two sentences. Here's a combination example of both contrast and also comparison. Mary, like her sister, has brown hair. However, the two differ when it comes to eye color. The transition word like shows how Mary and her sister are the same. They both have brown hair. The transition words, however and differ, indicate that the sisters do not have the same color eyes. The next pattern of organization, and the last one, is cause and effect pattern. This pattern describes or discusses an event or action that is caused by another event or action. Here's a few examples of cause and effect transition words. Therefore, hence, for this reason, since, leads to, creates, yields, stems from, produces, for, because, as a result, due to, thus, so. Here's 4 possible relationships. We have a single cause and a single effect. If you are caught speeding, then you will get a ticket. Here's an example of a single cause, but multiple effects. High fuel costs result in higher food prices, loss of jobs, and individual hardship. See how there's only one cause, but multiple effects. Here's an example of multiple causes and a single effect. Survey, question, read, recite, and review lead to good comprehension. Here's an example of multiple causes and multiple effects. It was raining and I missed my ride. Therefore, I got soaked and missed my test. Notice how each of the transition words in italics indicates the result of an answer. And all of those words in italics are examples of transition words relating to cause and effect. The last skill that we'll be taking a look at is making inferences. An inference is an educated guess you make about something that you are reading based on what you see in the text, what background information you already have on the subject, and on logic. Take a look at this paragraph about a boy named Kyle. Kyle ran into his house, slamming the door behind him. He threw his book bag on the floor and plopped on the couch. After 6 hours of playing grand larceny, he ate some pizza and fell asleep with a slice of pizza on his belly and his feet on his book bag. When Kyle came home from school the next day, he was noticeably distraught. He balled up his report card and placed it inside of a soup can in the garbage. Then he flipped the soup can upside down and relocated the garbage from other parts of the can, arranging over the soup can. He then plopped down on the couch and picked up his controller. So here's two questions. Why is Kyle distraught? And why does Kyle put the report card in a soup can? So think about it for a moment. Distraught. What do you think it might mean? In this case, distraught means sad or just upset. Why is he distraught? So remember, he just came home from school, right? So you saw him playing video games, eating pizza, and he just throws his book bag on the floor and kind of ignores it for the rest of the day. Think about it for a moment. He's looking at his report card and he's crumbling it up. That's probably why he's distraught, because guess what? That report card probably has a bad score on it. So now that you can kind of guess that he has a bad score on his report card, why do you think he puts the report card in the soup can? Think for a moment. Have you ever tried to hide something from your parents? Yeah, we all probably been there. So when we're using inferences to make guesses, we use a lot of background information that we already know, background information that we've learned over time in our life. So Kyle's probably hiding the evidence of his bad grade in that soup can. And remember, he puts a whole bunch of garbage over it too. Again, inferences can help us figure out things about a specific reading. They can help us make guesses. And again, in order to make inferences, you need to use background information that's right in front of you in whatever you're reading, and also to make other guesses. Logically think about other possibilities. Is there another reason why Kyle might be trying to hide his report card? Probably not in this case. Here's another guess. Do you think he is going to do any better on his next report card? Probably not. He plopped down on the couch and picked up his controller right after hiding the evidence. Another reading skill that you're going to have to know on the reading AccuPlacer is recognizing purpose and recognizing tone. So what is purpose? When we're looking at a piece of reading, ask it, why were you written? There might be several reasons why something is written. Inform, persuade, entertain. These are 3 reasons why a writer might have written this. What about the tone? Tone is the expression of attitude and feeling that you might be finding in a piece of reading. It might deal with maybe the emotions of the characters in the piece, or it might deal with what type of mood the author was in while they were writing it. And you can kind of tell based on maybe details or words what you think the tone might be. Here's another hint. Tone can sometimes tell you what type of purpose is in a specific piece of reading. Let's take a look at this paragraph right here about an alien. So let's take a look together to figure out both purpose and tone. On October 8th, 2040, mankind realized that Earth was not alone. It was a sunny autumn day in Washington, D.C. at NASA headquarters. Andrew Beckham was downloading data from a satellite orbiting Pluto. He looked away for a moment to smile at the picture of his son and daughter that he kept framed on his desk. He turned back to his computer screen and frowned. The data had stopped downloading from the satellite. Before he could check to see why, a bright light flashed in the center of NASA headquarters. When the light dimmed, 40 NASA scientists stared at a 6-foot-tall alien with green skin and black eyes, who had just appeared in the center of the room. The alien was holding the satellite that had been orbiting Pluto just a few moments before. The alien opened his mouth and said, "Is this yours? I think you dropped it." So what's the primary purpose of this paragraph? If you laughed, it might be entertainment. If you didn't, mind you, think about it for a moment. Even if you didn't laugh, what do you think the purpose of this is? Entertainment does not always mean to make someone laugh. Entertainment can mean to hold your attention. It can mean that you just can't put this book down. Inform means that you are giving information, or rather the writer is giving you information that will educate you. Persuade, which is one of the other purposes, is where the writer is trying to convince you of a specific opinion. This particular paragraph isn't really educating us about something in particular. It's about a future event. It's not really informative, and it's not really convincing us of anything in particular. Probably the key is that, one, it's probably fantasy. It hasn't happened yet. In this case, entertainment. This is the purpose. It's not really persuading us. It's not really informing us. It's just a little piece of entertainment that might make you laugh. So what do you think the tone is now that we've talked about the idea of how it's entertaining? Question for you. Did you actually laugh while you were reading this? It does have a fairly humorous tone. So the tone in this case is probably humorous. It's not really suspenseful. It's not really scary. It's not really sad either. Because seriously, an alien just showed up in NASA with a satellite in his hand and said, "Is this yours? I think you dropped it." In this case, it's probably going to be humorous as opposed to maybe other tones. In order to see the next video, which is going to be about the types of questions that might appear on the Reading Accuplacer, please click on the link in the top right-hand corner of the video.
This project has been made possible by a grant from Pathways and the support of the Lash Center for Teaching and Learning at Bristol Community College.